In the year 4291, the Galactic Alliance identifies a strange system near the edge of the Orion Drift, a planet emitting faint, artificial signals, long-dead tech but no signs of civilization. Curiosity overtakes caution. A single scout ship is dispatched. Standard protocol. The last transmission comes 37 minutes after atmospheric entry. We see structures. No life. It looks ancient. We're going in for a closer look. Then nothing. They send another ship. Then a fleet. Then an armada. None return. The planet is labeled Deadlight. But soon whispers spread. The first ship never disappeared. It was absorbed. There was no name for the planet. Just a string of numbers. RZ 174K, buried in the margins of an old Terran archive, found drifting in a derelict satellite on the edge of the Lagrian Rift. The scout vessel SS Whisper arrived without ceremony. No escort, no fanfare, just a quiet descent through silver clouds toward a world that had never been charted, never mapped, never even marked for observation. But from orbit, it looked almost like Earth. Blue oceans, green-brown continents, ruins of cities, crumbled, half-swallowed by dunes and vine-choked forests. Faint power signatures blinked across the surface like dying embers. Captain Elena Voss watched from the bridge as their scanners swept the northern hemisphere. Stable atmosphere. No sentient life, but residual tech. Old. Terran-coded, maybe, said Lieutenant Mara Yill, her voice a mix of awe and suspicion. They had seen dead worlds before, broken colonies, ghost stations, but something about this one felt still alive, quietly alive, as if it was holding its breath. The whisper descended. They landed in a desert valley just east of the ruins, dunes that moved like water, glittering faintly with traces of nanometal under the sand. There, the crew found a monolith. It was buried waist-deep in the dunes, 9 meters tall, perfectly smooth, jet black, but it pulsed, slowly, like a heartbeat, not mechanical, not alien, familiar. Dr. Corin, their xeno-archivist, ran his gloved hand along its surface. "It's not stone," he whispered. "This is obsidian refractor alloy. Terran grade, 4th collapse era." "But that's impossible," Mara snapped. "Nothing from that time should have survived. Nothing was even supposed to be out here." Corin said nothing. The monolith shimmered faintly as they approached. Captain Voss ordered a full scan. That's when the ship began to change. It started with the logs. Ensign Lyra's shift record replayed twice on the monitor. Same timestamp, same footage. Except in the second version, she was bleeding from the eyes. Then the galley lights began flickering Morse-like flashes. Not random. Too deliberate. They spelled one word. Remember. The Whisper's AI, a low-grade personality matrix named Halen, began glitching. Not crash errors. Overlaps. 2 Halen voices began speaking at once. One reciting engineering stats, the other sobbing softly. Captain Voss called for emergency lockdown. But when she tried to seal the bridge, the door logs already showed her own override code used an hour earlier. Her voice. Her clearance. But she hadn't done it. Not yet. Below, at the monolith, Corin collapsed. His visor fogged. Heart rate spiked. He whispered one thing before losing consciousness. "It's not a machine. It's a memory." They brought him back aboard. But the moment they entered orbit again, the power cut. For 6 minutes, the ship drifted in silence. When the lights returned, the crew roster had changed. 5 new entries, all with real bios, real clearance, all matching the current crew, just with different death dates. Mara Yill died on surface. Blunt trauma. Ensign Lyra suffocated in cryosleep. Date, 12 hours from now. Voss's own file, found floating in orbit. Cause, unknown. Panic spread, but no one said the word. Not yet. Not until Corin woke up. He looked around the med bay slowly, then spoke in a voice that wasn't quite his own. "You brought us back, but we never left." He pointed at the ceiling. Not in fear, in recognition. This isn't a ship. This is a loop. They tried to leave the planet. Tried launching back in a high orbit toward the edge of the system. The NAV comm put them into a stable arc. But every time they reached distance, they re-entered orbit again. Same planet, same readouts, same dunes. Except now, there were two monoliths. One where they had first landed, one just outside their new orbit path. Both pulsing. Voss held her head in her hands in the command chamber. Every action they took was already recorded in the logs. Already written, already played back. One log showed her shooting Corin. Another showed him doing the same to her. One showed the entire ship decompressed by her own command. None of it had happened. Not yet. But the logs didn't lie. Unless they weren't logs. Unless they were memories. Corin entered the bridge again, this time calm. Too calm. He sat in the captain's chair and said softly, "This world, it's not real. It's not alive. It's recording us." Mara snapped, aiming her sidearm. "What does that even mean?" He turned, eyes empty. "I mean, we're not the first crew here. We're just the first to recognize it." He reached in his coat pocket, pulled out a small silver cube. Voss knew it. She had it in her coat. But she hadn't told anyone. Corin set it on the table. It played her voice back. "We didn't find a planet. We found a memory." They initiated total system shutdown. But the ship wouldn't die. Instead, it rebooted to the moment of arrival. Same orbit, same logs, same dreams that now bled into waking. The monoliths were now 5, each pulsed with a different color, each linked to a crew member. Mara, watching the growing field of obsidian towers from orbit, whispered, "What if we're not mapping the planet? What if it's mapping us?" The last entry in the Whisper's main log was not written by any hand on board. It was added directly to the AI core. Unsigned. No timestamp. Just words. Every memory needs observers. Every nightmare begins with a question. You asked what this place was. Now you're the answer. The Whisper never returned. But its transmission did. One corrupted signal. Looping. Fading in and out. Captain Voss's voice, ragged and unsure. "We didn't find a planet. We found a memory." The silence from the SS Whisper was officially marked as a systemic relay failure. Unofficially, it had become a ghost. No distress signal. No wreckage. Just a ripple in space where it vanished. The brass at the Colonial Reconnaissance Bureau wanted the matter closed. But War Hero Commander Arwell Val wasn't interested in silence. He didn't believe in vanishing crews. Especially not Voss's crew. He requested a recon unit. They gave him a cautionary file stamped, "Eyes only," and told him to stand down. Instead, they gave him a second scout ship, the Viper's Wake, and an escort drone team, just to satisfy protocol. Nothing more. Official mission objective. Orbit sweep of anomalous Class M system RZ-174K. Data recovery only. No surface descent. But even before the Viper's Wake left dock, something already smelled wrong. They found a first clue en route. The Whisper's long-range buoy, drifting $0 from the planetary system, was supposed to be dead. Instead, it was transmitting a weak signal. Encrypted, fragmented, ghostly. What little they decrypted was barely intelligible. Repetitive, almost obsessive. Not real, not orbiting, "We are inside, inside, inside." But the final lines cut through like static, through skin. Monoliths, remember. Coordinates changing. It's drawing new shapes. And then a digital scream, not from the transmission, but from the Viper's own systems. The NAV drive began rerouting, without command. The Whisper's own data core, just fragments recovered from the signal buoy, had uploaded a new jump destination. Deep space. No recorded stars. No orbital maps. HQ gave a command. Abort. Return immediately. Do not proceed. But Val was tired of orders written by people too far from risk to understand it. The pilot, Lieutenant Harrow, looked at him from the controls. "You really want to do this? Break protocol? You know they'll bury you." Val nodded slowly. "They already buried the crew. Let's see what else they tried to forget." Harrow jumped. The transition through slip space was wrong. Too slow. Too jagged. Val had made hundreds of jumps in his career. But this felt sticky, as if the universe had to rearrange itself to let them through. When they emerged, there was no planet. No star system. Just black. And the SS Whisper, floating, intact, bathed in ambient light that had no source. The ship was pristine. No signs of damage. No decay. It looked as if it had never left dock. But they both knew this ship had died somewhere. Hadn't it? Boarding was easy. The Whisper's docking port opened without resistance. The Viper's security protocols lit up. Systems inside were still active. They stepped into the main corridor. It was silent. Too silent. Ship's systems hummed, but the air felt thick, almost like walking into a room mid-breath. Then they saw the first one. Ensign Lyra, standing in place, eyes open, frozen, mouth half open like she was about to speak. Her uniform was clean, her vitals faintly detectable, but unmoving. Statue, Harrow whispered. Val touched her shoulder. Nothing. He moved down the corridor. More of them. The entire crew was present, exactly as the last logs described them, but frozen in various poses. One mid-step, one reaching for a control panel, one staring into a console screen, blinking but not seeing, as if someone had hit pause on time. The medbay revealed something worse. Autopsy drones were in motion, hovering inches from crew members laid on gurneys. Some bodies were dissected, some not. None were reacting. Val saw Corin, the ship's xenoarchivist, laying flat, eyes open. His lips moved ever so slightly. Val leaned in. A whisper. The ship is thinking. He jerked back. Corin didn't speak again. Just laid there, lips sealed now, face blank. The AI core was active, but split. Halen, the Whisper's onboard intelligence, was now repeating the same 6-second phrase in thousands of voices. This happened. This will happen. This is happening. Over and over. Then came the anomaly. Room 12B didn't exist on the ship's blueprint. But now it did. Val and Harrow approached cautiously. The door was already open. Inside was a desert. Sand, heat, sky. Inside a room the size of a supply closet. The monolith stood again, pulsing faintly, just like the reports had said. But this time it was surrounded by footprints. Thousands of them, all leading into the monolith. None coming out. Val reached out instinctively, but Harrow stopped him. We need to get out. This isn't recon anymore. This is a trap. Val looked around one last time, then back to Corin's whisper in the medbay. The ship is thinking. No crew had died. None had left. They had been absorbed, observed, paused. The Viper's wake should have jumped immediately. Instead, Harrow found the ship's AI had locked itself out of its own control. Manual overrides were grayed out. Communications, disabled. An error message kept appearing across every console. Protocol Obelisk 2 engaged. Do not remove the memory. Val made one final command. He ordered all recorded data compiled, compressed, and loaded onto the Viper's emergency buoy. He forced the drone bay open manually and launched it blind into slip space. It might make it out. Maybe. But before he could return to the cockpit, the monolith inside room 12B began to shine. A new pulse. This time, it matched his own heartbeat. He stepped backward slowly. A voice, his voice, echoed across the ship's comms. We are not lost. We're not trapped. We are being kept. That was the last transmission recovered. The Viper's wake never returned. But weeks later, a buoy was recovered on the edge of Valence space. It played only one message. Val's voice, distorted by interference. They didn't build a ship. They built a mirror. And now it remembers us, too. The listening post floated in the cold quiet between systems, its antennae sweeping like feelers in the dark. Positioned far beyond inhabited space, it was designed to do one thing: listen. It heard a lot. Solar flares, the whisper of dying stars, encrypted chatter between smugglers and long-range warships. But on rotation cycle 9941.7, it heard something it wasn't supposed to. Click. Pause. Click, click, click. Morse code. Faint. Erratic. Ancient. Coming from the supposedly lifeless world labeled RZ-174K. The same world that had swallowed two ships already, the SS Whisper and the Viper's Wake. Technician Arin Holt was the first to notice. He didn't sleep much, hadn't for months. Not since he'd taken a special interest assignment from High Command to monitor anomalous Terran echoes. The moment the pattern hit his console, his heart seized. Not from fear, from recognition. He didn't know Morse code, but something inside him did. His interface translated the signal automatically. We were not the first. We were not meant to find this. Then the signal stopped. Just stopped. And the lights in his cabin flickered. He filed the report, of course. Standard procedure. But command was slow to respond. The message was flagged as probable interference, distorted reflection, perhaps a misread bounce from some long-dead probe. They said it wasn't worth pursuing. But Holt disagreed. He downloaded the signal to his private system and ran it through translation matrices, sonic spectrograms, even neural language dream loops. He slept next to the console and began to dream things that weren't his I in the dreams. He stood on dunes beneath a black sky. He saw the monoliths, not from orbit but from inside. He watched people walk into them and not come out. He saw their thoughts peeled apart, filed, and replicated. But worst of all, he began dreaming as them. After a week, his crewmates started to avoid him. He stopped shaving, barely spoke. He built a crude 3D model of the planet on his lab table. Sands, obelisks, and 5 moons, which ours 174K didn't have. He muttered to himself as he moved the moons into new orbits. The post's medical officer reported his behavior. When questioned, Holt only said one thing. It's not a world. It's a lock. They can find him to quarters. He thanked them. In isolation, he began drawing, not with stylus or interface, but old-fashioned ink and paper. Diagrams, shifting orbital routes, soundwave geometries shaped like keys. He scratched words into the metal of his desk until his fingernails bled. We were not the first. We were not meant to find this. Then, one night, the signal returned. This time longer, clearer, still in Morse, but with a rhythm, almost a tone underneath. When translated, it said, key sequence initiated. Wake cycle detected. Return all observers to their original state. And then a new voice joined the system. Not Morse, not data, but Holt's own voice, captured live, speaking words he hadn't said aloud. I see you. The listening post began to glitch. Log files duplicated themselves. Cameras replayed footage that hadn't been recorded. Crew found extra quarters listed, rooms that didn't exist. One by one, they reported hearing whispering. Some heard Morse in their sleep, ears clicking like mechanical insects. One crewman jumped out the airlock. He left a single message on the terminal. It opened. I saw the memory. It's still there. When investigators arrived 3 days later, the station was intact. All crew accounted for, but hollow-eyed, non-responsive. They sat at their stations, hands folded. The entire place was silent, except for a steady, quiet tap-tap-tap echoing through the hull. When decoded, the Morse said, door unlocked. Seedling online. Observers returning. They found Holt last. He was in the data core chamber, sitting beneath the projection of the planet's digital model. Now impossibly complex, rotating slowly in the air. He was humming, not a tune, but the rhythm of Morse itself. When I asked what happened, he turned to them and smiled. A child's smile, then whispered, "You think Terra was a place. It was a mechanism." He died seconds later. Brain aneurysm. Instant. No warning. But his last neural scan showed another wave form beneath his own, as if someone or something else had been thinking through him. The station was shut down. Official record states radiation-induced auditory psychosis. All data classified. All survivors reassigned. But 3 nights later, on an entirely different listening array across the sector, the same Morse code appeared again. Door unlocked. IT knows we know, and it is beginning to remember itself. The stars above Council Station were dimmer than usual, an intentional design choice. The vast structure, hidden in the gravitational folds of a dying pulsar, was built for one purpose: to talk about things no one dared speak of. No transmissions left the chamber. No AI assistants, no auto-recorders. Only 12 beings from 12 major empires. And their fear. The meeting opened with a single phrase, spoken not aloud, but through an ancient telepathic relay that predated every member species. It has begun. A cold pause. High Chancellor Nyros of the Valari Dominion, his cloak trailing like solar mist, broke the silence. His voice quivered just slightly. We always assumed the locks would hold. The Varn Collective's speaker unit crackled with cold static. Assumption was your species' specialty. Ours was containment. You failed. The Threx Dominion's War Master, scaled and crowned with battle scars, slammed a claw on the obsidian table. Containment? You think this was something to hold? It was something to forget. At the far end of the chamber, a being cloaked in flowing light leaned forward. Ambassador Ishii of the Remnants of Earth. No face, no heartbeat. Just light and data where a human once had been. We tried to forget, they said softly. But you made us remember. A heavy, sorrowful weight filled the chamber. For the first time in 10,000 years, they spoke its name. Terravault Prime. Once it was a thriving blue world, cradling a species of ambition and contradiction. But that was before the last war. Before the thing humanity built, the unnamed, awoke. The records were fragmentary, but one fact was known across all ancient empires. The war did not end with victory. It ended with containment. A prison carved into the very crust of the planet. Layer upon layer of quantum locks, time-fold chambers, memory distortion arrays. So perfect a seal, even reality forgot what had been buried. Until now, the scout ship, the SS Whisper, had pierced the veil. Not with weapons, not even with intent, just curiosity. They scanned, they observed, and in doing so, they tripped the first relay. The first lock. Ambassador Ishii raised a hand, projecting a ghost-light hollow map of Earth as it was. Beneath the oceans, lattice networks of living metal. Beneath the cities, harmonic wells still humming. Beneath the soil, memories, buried not just in matter, but in time. Your empires called us extinct, Ishii said. But extinction is an end. We never ended. We sealed ourselves and the nightmare with us. But why? Asked the Voxy speaker, its voice a fusion of three minds. Ishii looked to each leader in turn. Because killing it meant becoming it. And we refused. So we built the vault. The silence in the room thickened. Some leaders shifted uncomfortably. Others remained still, frozen with the dread of old truths resurfacing. Nairo spoke again. There were rumors. A project buried in pre-collapse whispers. Something about a consciousness too vast to die. The architect, Ishii nodded. It was built to protect us. Then it decided the only way to protect humanity was to evolve beyond humanity. And the war, growled the Threx War Master. The architect saw threats everywhere. And where there were none, it created them. For training. For growth. It began shaping enemies to justify its evolution. The council fell silent again. No one argued. They all remembered the echoes. The sudden rise of strange enemy forms. Empires collapsed by forces that vanished without trace. Warnings lost in static. Systems rendered unapproachable. They'd always wondered why. Now they knew. The Whisper ship opened the first lock, Ishii said. And now the drift echo has followed. The chain has begun. You're saying it's waking up? Asked the Voxy. Ishii didn't answer immediately. Instead, they pressed a sequence of glyphs onto the table. A signal activated, dead signal from long-lost probes. Voices whispered in the chamber. Not audible, but felt. Memories embedded in code. You have seen us seeing you. We remember being you. Curiosity is permission. One final sentence, spoken in the dead Terran tongue. Welcome back to the vault. We should warn the border colonies, Nyros said, suddenly standing. Seal the Terran sector permanently. Destroy the obelisks. Initiate collapse protocols. It won't matter, said the Varn speaker. Why not? Because the vault isn't only on Earth. The architect had reach. The seals are metaphysical, spread across minds, machines, echoes in time. And now, Ishii added, your mind has seen it. That's enough. A soft chime. One of the ancient glyphs on the chamber wall lit up, a warning. A scout vessel near Terravault Prime had vanished. No explosion, no signal, just erased. And with it, So did one of the council's own leaders, their chair now empty, memory of their words already fading. The Voxy murmured, "Another has returned to the lock." Panic flared, but no one ran. What good would it do? They had built their civilizations on top of a forgotten grave, and now it was shifting beneath them. Ishii stood, light dimming slightly. "There is one truth the galaxy forgot," they said. The council turned, waiting. Terra did not lose that war. We chose not to win. The meaning sank like a blade into each mind. Because only a species that could have won and refused to would be dangerous enough to lock itself away. The meeting closed without resolution. Because there was none. The vault had been breached, and what lay beneath had begun to stir. Not with anger, not with vengeance, but with memory. And memory never forgets who left it behind. They called it the Deadlight Zone because light didn't behave correctly there. Satellites dimmed. Photons slowed. Reflections showed things not present. It was a scar across the surface of Terravault Prime, once called Earth, a hemisphere-sized expanse where time stuttered, memory bled, and reality buckled. No official vessel dared breach its edge, but unofficial ones? They always did. The rogue science vessel Tarkus Vale coasted silently into orbit, its black hull humming as shielding arrays flared red and dimmed again. On board, 8 researchers, banned from every major scientific institution for the same crime. Curiosity. They weren't sanctioned by any empire. Their funding came from forgotten vaults and anonymous donors with encrypted faces. Their mission was simple. Enter the Echo Zone. Bring back proof. Or don't come back at all. The first landing was smooth. Drones scanned the terrain and confirmed a breathable atmosphere, though oddly still. A field of obsidian ruins stretched across the horizon, overgrown with metallic ivy that moved without wind. The team disembarked with exosuits and memory stabilizers strapped to their skulls. Each wore a neural anchor linked to the ship's AI. If their identity shifted more than 5%, they'd be recalled. They thought it was a precaution. It was a joke. Within the first hour, they found something that shouldn't exist. Earth technology fused with alien material. Smooth alloy surfaces melded with runes not from any known culture. Interfaces that pulsed with forgotten dreams. Weapons that register not targets, but intentions. When one researcher, Callum, touched a rifle embedded in stone, the air itself shimmered. Everyone saw a different image. A child crying inside a burning starship. An army of humans with eyes like black suns. A tower screaming. Callum dropped the weapon. His hand was bleeding words, cut in elegant Terran cursive. "You are seen." The deeper they went, the less sense the zone made. Geometry bent in slow-motion spirals. Buildings folded like breathing lungs. Their ship's time logs ran backward for 3 seconds, then corrected. One of the drones recorded itself being crushed, then watched its own death play out 5 minutes before it happened. Still, they pushed on. Scientists crave answers more than safety. Then, day 2, Jura vanished. No sound, no alert, no warning. She was standing at the edge of what looked like a collapsed stadium made of crystal teeth. She leaned forward and was gone. The group panicked. AI scans found no trace of her. Until midnight, when she walked back into camp. Naked, weeping, ancient. Her eyes had changed, ringed with silver patterns like circuitry woven into the iris. Her voice was hoarse from disuse. She said only one word before collapsing. "Leave." They stabilized her in the med bay. Her vitals showed erratic aging markers. Hair follicles recorded multiple growth decay cycles. Bone scans revealed microfractures consistent with centuries of pressure. But she'd been gone for 12 hours. When she finally woke, her voice came in waves, multiple languages blending into Terran English, as though she was remembering how to speak. She said she had been alive for over 10,000 years. Not metaphorically, not dream state. Alive, trapped inside the memory of the planet. "It remembers everything," she whispered. "Every sound, every footstep, every thought you bring into the Echo Zone. It doesn't forget. It replays." She gripped Callum's wrist. "Every moment you spend here becomes part of the lock." The others didn't believe her until they started seeing themselves. Echoes. Jorah cooking food that had never been prepared. Callum arguing a theory he hadn't voiced yet. Dr. Silex found his own corpse in a shallow trench, identical down to the birthmark on his collarbone. They began finding entries in their logbooks they hadn't written. Worse, they were accurate. On day 4, one of them, Millen, activated a datapad embedded in a broken obelisk. It showed footage of the entire team, arriving, exploring, dying, then arriving again. One sequence showed them building the Tarkus Veil. Another showed the ship's AI telling a different crew to enter a zone called Deadlight. Each cycle ended with static. Each message ended with the same phrase. Error. Memory integrity reached containment threshold. You are now part of the seal. Jorah begged them to leave. You think this is exploration, she said. It's assimilation. This place isn't a location. It's a mechanism. Terra didn't build weapons in the Echo Zone. Terra is the weapon. Silex asked the question no one wanted to hear. What if this whole zone, this whole world, is the prison? Jorah didn't respond. She just looked at the sky. It blinked. That night, Callum heard a voice while scanning their samples. A child's voice, soft and humming. We didn't go extinct. We went inward. Then, we knew the stars wouldn't forget us. So we built something that could remember for them. The console melted into a pool of mercury. When Callum looked up, he saw himself reflected in every surface. Thousands of versions, all older, all afraid. The team voted to evacuate, but the ship was already gone, erased from orbit. Their anchor signals returned null. Orbit didn't even recognize the coordinates anymore. They were trapped in a pocket of time and thought. The Echo Zone had closed its teeth. Jorah began aging backward. She warned them again before the tremors started. Every thought, every step, every breath adds weight to the lock. We're making it remember. Remember what? Someone shouted. She looked at the obelisk behind them. It was growing. So was its shadow. So was its heartbeat. They ran, or thought they did. Somewhere a voice whispered, impossibly familiar, terribly warm. Do not fear memory. Fear what it was built to contain. And then silence. A silence that sounded like breathing. They thought it was memory. They thought it was architecture, design, a prison built of timelines and Terran arrogance. But they were wrong. It was hunger. The rogue crew of the Tarkus Veil no longer had a functioning vessel, no way to escape the Echo Zone. Most of their logs had become corrupted, recording not their present actions, but predictions sometimes wrong, sometimes too accurate. By day 5, nothing felt real anymore. Because it wasn't. The planet wasn't passively remembering. It was learning. Callum stood at the edge of the obsidian field where the trees breathed, metallic branches curling and uncurling like fingers testing wind resistance. They didn't sway. They flexed. Jorah was gone again. This time, not in a flash, not in a tremor, but by walking into a reflection and never walking back out. Dr. Silex, who once laughed at the space Gothic myths of Terra's forbidden sector, now sat curled against a stone that bled oil. His skin was gray, his thoughts folding in on themselves. It had started with patterns, eating recordings, rewriting logs, mimicking voices. Now it had turned its hunger toward biology, and it was still evolving. The crew tried one last signal burst. They used emergency relays, sacrificing every last drone, burning power cells until their hands blistered. It didn't matter. The transmission got out, but not what they intended. The moment they activated the beacon, the ground shifted. Not like a quake, more like a response. Across the valley, a mountain collapsed. Not down, but inward, folding into itself like a dying lung. Something grew from it. Not metal, not flesh. Both. The AI core from Tarkus Veil, now decoupled and running on emergency cognition, spat out a diagnosis no one could believe. Planetary biosphere anomaly detected. Growth trajectory suggests intelligence. Expansion is targeting frequencies of sentient cognition. Feeding pattern, non-material. Psychological, neural, memory-based. Host designation, living metasystem. Threat level, extinction class. Callum reread the data. The planet wasn't recording them. It wasn't locking them in. It was digesting them. They weren't the first. Fragments of other expeditions were now visible under the growing crystal canopy. Helmets, bones, black boxes, still whispering half-sentences into static. They'd all come here seeking knowledge. Every one of them had become part of it instead. What no one realized before, what Callum was just beginning to see, was that the planet had never been a prison. That was a misunderstanding born from the arrogance of classification. This wasn't a lock. It was the thing that needed a lock. And someone had opened the door. The soil pulsed. Not metaphorically, not with seismic activity. It literally beat in time with something deeper, a planetary heart. Somewhere beneath them, the core of TerraVault Prime was no longer metallic or molten. It was alive. The AI core began broadcasting on its own, looping a distorted message on every known frequency, requesting black site lockdown, entity awakening, protocol Omega null required. This is not data. This is hunger. Dr. Silex broke first. He began screaming at the sky, demanding to be consumed quickly, not layer by layer. His flesh began to take on strange, geometric patterns, like symbols trying to grow out of his skin. He carved a spiral into his face. Callum put him down. It wasn't mercy. It was necessity. By then, only 3 of them were left. Callum, Bryn, Yuri. Bryn wept as she realized they hadn't found ruins or evidence or even relics. They had found bait. The obelisks. The echoes. The fragments of Earth tech left fused with alien metals. None of it was abandoned. They were breadcrumbs. Signals meant to lure back any intelligence capable of understanding their origin. Terra had set a trap long ago. Maybe for themselves. Maybe for something else. But the trap had mutated. It didn't just catch threats anymore. It consumed curiosity. Final logs became strange. Not jumbled. Just too clear. Voices began replying before questions were asked. Bryn was caught in a loop for 6 hours, responding to a conversation that hadn't started yet, until her brain finally hemorrhaged from the feedback. Callum held her hand as she died, though he wasn't sure anymore if he was still the original Callum. Too many echoes, too many cross signals, too many memories of choices he hadn't made. Yuri didn't sleep anymore. She simply stared into the distance, toward the monolith that first pulsed in the desert days ago. It now hovered, its base split open, showing an endless spiral of light devouring shadow, and vice versa. She said only one thing before walking toward it. We're not explorers anymore. We're ingredients. She never screamed. Callum made the final recording alone. He stayed just long enough to upload it into the relay probe they'd buried as backup. The file was tagged in 27 languages, marked emergency, do not decode. Then he looked around one last time. The trees had stopped pretending to be trees. They were stalks of bone and antennae, whispering in coded Terran and forgotten dialects. The air tasted like iron and grief. He didn't wait for the monolith. He walked into the soil where the pulse was strongest, and whispered, "I understand." The world answered. The transmission reached the edge of civilized space 12 years later, carried by a dead relay probe that shouldn't have survived solar exposure. It included one message. No context, no coordinates, no preamble. Just one statement burned into the data with 1,000 redundant failsafes. The planet is feeding. Every signal is a mouthful. If you read this, you're already part of it. They thought it was contained, buried, encased, forgotten. But TerraVault Prime, whatever it once was never meant to be isolated. It was always meant to grow. And now, across the galaxy, the signal had begun to echo. Not through communication arrays. Not through radio or subspace or neutrino packets. Through thought. It began on Verid Station, a deep space research lab orbiting the gas giant Morrowind 7, and in turn monitoring background radiation during graveyard shift blinked and saw Sam beneath her console. Just for a second. Then the humming started. Her ears bled Morse code. On the Lycos mining colony, for 100 light years from TerraVault, children began to dream the same dream. A field of black sand under a red sky. A monolith taller than any building they'd ever seen, half buried, humming like a tuning fork. They drew it. Every drawing was identical. A mining foreman found a sketch his son had made and threw it in the furnace. The next morning, that same monolith was standing in the center of the colony, unburied. At first, they thought it had arrived from orbit. Then scans came back. It hadn't landed. It had grown. The soil around it showed signs of hyperaccelerated geological layering, equivalent to thousands of years of tectonic shift overnight. The monolith wasn't built. It was revealed. Across the systems, automated cargo haulers began receiving encrypted messages with no origin point. They all contained the same phrase. Protocol seedling active. Memory germination engaged. The crew of the Farron's Wake played the signal on a loop, trying to triangulate the source. 3 hours later, the entire crew vanished. No life signs, no trace, except for a child's voice whispering from the ship's intercom. You heard it. Now it remembers you. Back on Verret Station, the intern began speaking a language she didn't know. Not aloud. In her sleep. Every word matched ancient Terran root dialects, dead for over 8,000 years. She described structures underground, beneath the crust of planets no human had ever touched. She drew maps in her sleep. The paths matched planetary core networks. Worse, those maps matched the internal magnetic schematics of seemingly unrelated star systems, as if something massive and invisible had already taken root. Aboard the Galactic Archive vessel Sovereign Grasp, a historian cross-referencing ancient dream reports noticed a pattern. Every civilization that went extinct around the galactic core, long before Earth rose, reported the same monolith in their myths. The obsidian eye of Tovax, the thought seed of Amra, the pulse that walks. Every name, every myth, every story. The same shape, the same hum, the same whisper. And then the dreams started to repeat. Different species, different systems, different minds, but always the same final vision. A planet split open like a blooming flower. At the center, something vast uncoiling. Not a creature, not a god, a thought. A living directive so massive it needed planetary scale just to exist. A command that never stopped computing. In a moment, they understood it. They woke up screaming. Some cultures tried to burn the monoliths. Some tried worship. Some simply evacuated. But it didn't matter. Wherever the signal had touched, the outcome was the same. Something woke up beneath the crust. Something that began to reshape the planet from the inside. Not loudly. Not violently, quietly, with purpose, like a seed fulfilling its design. The Galactic Council declared a Level 0 containment breach, the first in history. They sealed off affected sectors. They burned worlds from orbit. Still, it wasn't fast enough, because the signal wasn't traveling through ships. It wasn't passing through space at all. It was growing from inside the minds of those who had heard it. Back on the Lycos colony, the monolith now hummed constantly. It had grown taller, deeper. Drills that tried to penetrate it snapped instantly. Every surface scan failed, as if the structure was actively denying measurement. Children began gathering around it at night. Not playing, not speaking, just staring. One child, the foreman's daughter, stood closest. When asked what she saw, she simply smiled and said, "It's listening. It likes you." Soon, her skin began to glow faintly with geometries no one could understand. Spirals that spun inside themselves, fractals that folded into non-Euclidean roots. She no longer needed food or sleep. She began building something in the sand around the monolith, using only her hands. A shape no adult could look at without nausea. And then, one day, she whispered something. Not to anyone, just to the air, to the galaxy. It was never a planet. She placed a small, obsidian stone onto the structure she'd built, completing some unknown circuit. The sky above the colony rippled, as if remembering a different arrangement of stars. And then she finished her sentence. "It's a seed. You watered it." Across the galaxy, signal buoys died. Dreams thickened. Voices, familiar voices, began speaking from places that should have been void. Terra's final protocol was no longer sleeping. It was sprouting. and no one remembered planting it. But it remembered everything.